Welcome to News Inside. I'm An Jang-hyun. Let's meet our panelists, Professor Shin Sang-yeop and Dr. Bong Young-sik.
Pleased to be here.
North Korea's 7th Workers' Party Congress came to a close this week after a 4-day run. It was the first political gathering of its kind since October of 1980, and hence the first since Kim Jong-un came into power. The event received media coverage across the world. Here are some of the highlights from Arirang TV's News Center.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has been given a new title.
The title Kim will be given was a highlight of the convention, as Pyongyang said it will give the leader the party's top title. Kim's promotion to the party's chairman is seen as a move to dominate the party and consolidate his power, as the young Kim has been seeking to secure the legitimacy of the ruling Kim family's dynasty.
Nevertheless, South Korea's unification ministry reiterated Monday that North Korea must get rid of its nuclear capability.
South Korea and the international community's corresponding stance is that North Korea cannot be accepted as a nuclear weapons state. Until it abandons its nuclear program, we will continue with our strong sanctions and pressure.
Now, Professor Shin, a natural question to ask is why now? Why hold the Party Congress at this point? And why did the North stop holding it for over 3 decades?
Well, I think we have to review the brief history of the Workers' Party in North Korea. In actually 1945, October 10th, the Workers' Party was established. Since its establishment until the end of the 1960s, I mean, this period we call it the stabilization period of the Workers' Party. During this party, the Workers' Party Congress was held every year or every other years. So the first, the Workers' Party was held in the August in 1946, and then the second one was held in 1948. Third one was held in 1956, and fourth one was held in 1961. But from the 1970s, I mean, this area can be called the era which the North Korean government led by Kim Il-sung could have enough governing power of North Korea. During this period, the Workers' Party was held almost once every 10 years. But as we know very well from the 1990s, so-called the communism around the world has been started to being collapsed. And then particularly in 1994, in the middle of those kind of global trends, the Kim Il-sung died in 1994. So politically, economically, North Korea was in peril. So during this time, I mean, it seems to be quite difficult for North Korean government to hold the Workers' Party Congress. So, well, this year, after 3 decades, they convened the Workers' Party. And then particularly this Workers' Party Congress seems to be very important for the current leader, Kim Jong-un, to reconfirm his leadership in North Korea, particularly in the middle of the economic difficulties caused by the economic sanctions. Maybe Kim Jong-un tried to show his leadership to the world, not only to the North Koreans, but also to the world, I think.
And Kim Jong-un was given a new title during this event, becoming the Workers' Party chairman and effectively starting his own era. We also saw a reshuffle in key positions as well. How do these changes, how will they affect North Korea?
It is true that the 7th Party Congress was the coming out party for Kim Jong-un to declare to the world that now Democratic People's Republic Korea, DPRK, is truly a Kim Jong-un state. But you may ask why then Kim Jong-un had waited for almost 4 years since he assumed the top leadership after his father's death. Some people may interpret that as a sign of weakness of the Kim Jong-un leadership, but different interpretations can be made. It might be possible that Kim Jong-un wanted to secure the image of a very loyal son to his father and his grandfather. After all, the reason why Kim Jong-un was anointed as the new leader of North Korea was simply because he was the grandson of the great leader Kim Il-sung and the son of the next leader Kim Jong-il. So
it was extremely necessary in accordance with the cultural code of North Korea based upon Confucianism to mourn for the death of his father for at least 3 years. That's a Confucian tradition for any learned elite or political leaders. And that practice for waiting for 3 years while mourning for the death of his father was actually practiced by his father too. When Kim Il-sung suddenly died of heart attack in 1994, Kim Jong-il did not assume any official position. And he instead created, 3 years after his father's death, the new organization, National Defense Commission, and exercised his control from that position. So I think Kim Jong-un kind of took that system out of the playbook left by his father to earn the trust and respect from North Korean citizens that he is truly loyal and faithful heir of top leadership according to the Confucian tradition. And the second point is that just like his father did, that he also created a new organization as a source of his political power, which is a State Affairs Bureau instead of the Korean Workers' Party.
Now, during the party congress, Kim Jong-un said that North Korea, as a responsible nuclear state, will not use its nuclear weapons unless its sovereignty is threatened by other nuclear powers, and also said that it will strive for global denuclearization. Why bring up denuclearization? Because obviously it doesn't mean North Korea is going to give up its nuclear program.
When we read our meaning between the sentence in his speech, he just sent a message that North Korea is already a nuclear power state, and then we are ready to cooperate with the global community about the denuclearization, the program, something like that, which means that he wanted to change the current situation facing North Korea, which is very full of tension. So I think in his speech, he just tried to give two messages. One is, as I said before, North Korea is already a nuclear power state. Second one is that North Korea is also, as one member of the global community, is ready to talk about one of the global issues, that is denuclearization, with the global the community, I think.
Yeah, it is very interesting that North Korea somehow tried to emulate the practice of the United States, try to demand the entire world to recognize North Korea as a nuclear state. That's the no first use nuclear policy maintained by the United States since Jimmy Carter administration. So basically, North Korea, as Professor Sin correctly explained, that argue that we are already a nuclear state and deal with it, accept it as a reality. So if you're a member of the 1960 Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, that North Korea walked away from, then there are two main goals of NPT. One is to prevent horizontal proliferation, new countries acquiring nuclear weapons. But there is another principle, which is preventing the vertical proliferation, meaning that the countries that are already nuclear states will not increase their nuclear warheads or make their nuclear technology more sophisticated. And North Korea is behaving just like the United States, saying that, we have already nuclear weapons, but we will not use them before we are attacked by other countries with nuclear weapons.
And by stressing global denuclearization, it might have hinted that the U.S. needs to reduce its nuclear arsenal.
North Korea is basically asking the United States to grant parity as a nuclear state. So any dialogue on North Korea's nuclear programs in the future will be argued by North Korea not as a dialogue for the purpose of denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula, but it will be framed as a nuclear disarmament talk between North Korea and other states.
Yes.
So Kim Jong-un did propose holding military talks between the two Koreas while calling for the withdrawal of U.S. troops from the peninsula. What's the hidden agenda here?
I think North Korean leadership was not really carefully prepared to propose any groundbreaking proposal for the purpose of the tension reduction on the Korean Peninsula. I was carefully listening to the content of Party Congress, especially something regarding the possible military-to-military dialogue, but it was basically repetition of the previous proposal in a very shallow level. So I was like, where's the beef? I don't really detect any seriousness in proposing military-to-military dialogue between the two Koreas.
Well, in time for the party congress, North Korea invited a large group of foreign journalists to the country, only to deny them access to the main event. In fact, these reporters were only allowed to watch recorded broadcasts of the event. And we also saw 3 BBC journalists get expelled for allegedly insulting the dignity of the state and being disrespectful to its leader. Why go to all this trouble? It's an isolated, closed-off country anyway.
It is reported about 100 foreign journalists have been invited, but they cannot have a chance to even get inside the place where the party congress was held. And I think the reason, there could be several reasons, but one of the main reasons is this. Kim Jong-un is still early 30s. And then North Korea is in a very difficult situation. Under such a kind of stressful situation, I think North Koreans are really afraid of making some small mistakes. The great leader should be a leader, remain a leader. They do not want to destroy such a kind of great leadership of Kim Jong-un. So they wanted to use this kind of way of broadcasting as a safety net to prevent something happen which are not desirable for the leadership or for the North Korea itself. So there must be some big gaps in understanding about the mass media between the Western people, Western government and North Korean government.
They hoped for some positive coverage,
I think so, yes.
but it backfired.
In fact, I think there must be backfires. I think so. They did not a very good job, at least in terms of the dealing with foreign journalists. I think.
Well, the website 38 North has reported of signs that Pyongyang is gearing up for its next nuclear test. What do you think will happen?
There must be a possibility that North Korea will conduct the nuclear test. But there must be some pushing factors. They are our attitude of Chinese government, and then, of course, including the stance of the rest of the world. If China sticks to the current position, definitely, I think it will be very burdensome on the North Korean government to conduct the nuclear test. So to make a long story short, I think the possibility exists, but I think we have to wait and see, and then we have to look at the policy changes of the global community, particularly the mainland China, I think.
Well, the leadership is also going to want to make up for the failed missile tests.
I'm always afraid of making any predictions about North Korea. But I'd like to consider 2 points. One is that the proposal to start negotiations on possible signing of the peace treaty on the Korean Peninsula to put an official end on the Korean War is still on the table, and China would not want the proposal scrapped away by provocation by North Korea. So there is a burden for North Korea to take into account. And the second point is that the Obama administration of the United States is getting close to the end of its term. So before the United States will have a new president after the end of this year, then North Korea might be interested in doing something very similar to what it did during the final month of the Bill Clinton administration in 2000, for the sake of giving the last shot at making some reasonable deal brokered between North Korea and the United States. For that purpose, North Korea may be restraining itself from conducting another nuclear test, but just dangling as a kind of a strategic card or bargaining threat to the United States to agree on negotiations with North Korea.
In the meantime, Seoul shared the same response as you to North Korea's call for dialogue, saying, where's the beef? In other words, it's insincere. It also said that there will be no change in its North Korea policy. So how do you foresee inter-Korean relations in the coming months?
Well, in a narrow context of inter-Korean dialogue, I don't think there will be any groundbreaking change made by either side. If you read the list of the new members of the political bureau of the Central Committee of the Korean Workers' Party, you see familiar names, especially the cabinet minister of Park Bong-ju, who is in charge of economic development, and the comeback of party secretary Choi Ryong-hae. So I don't think Kim Jong-un was ready to really shape and change in a fundamental ways of the government structure of North Korea, or ready to make a groundbreaking proposal with regard to the Korean unification or denuclearization or military-to-military dialogue with the South. So since North Korea is not ready to make bold proposals, I don't think South Korea will be feeling pressures to propose its own bold proposals for the sake of breaking out of current stalemate.
We'll have to wait and see. Now let's move on to our second story of the week.
Back in 2011, a number of patients surfaced with lung conditions caused by reasons unknown. Most were pregnant women and infants. Medical staff reported the incidents and placed requests for an investigation. Later that year, healthcare officials announced they believed the damage was caused by humidifier disinfectants, and related products were removed from the market. The following year, families of the victims pressed criminal charges against the heads of 10 disinfectant producers, launching a long legal battle. And early this year, prosecutors put together a dedicated investigation team to look into whether there were any criminal intent and to dig further into the cause and effect. Out of the 146 deaths confirmed by the government, 103 were linked back to Oxy-Rekit Benkisser, leading to a belated public apology by the company's Korea office CEO. The move failed to quell the anger of those affected. Up until now, some 1,500 people have been reported as victims. Of these, 239 are already dead. Bereaved family members and health and safety-related NGOs have so far filed charges against 10 products, as well as 19 producers and retailers, involving 256 former and current company executives. Meanwhile, on the political front, lawmakers are looking to launch a separate investigation and possibly create a fund to aid victims and their families. Consumers are taking part in nationwide product boycotts, signaling a long journey ahead until victims of the toxic disinfectants are able to find closure in the lengthy battle for accountability.
So why did it take 5 long years to finally see progress on this issue?
The central obstacle is for the prosecutor's office to establish a reliable causal relationship. Whether the case should be charged as a manslaughter case or willful negligence or the murder. And it seems like prosecutor's office of South Korean government needed enough amount of time to gather enough evidence to establish the causal link between the toxic nature of the product and actual incidents.
So the company accused of producing the largest number of victims, Oxy-Rekit Benkisser, recently held a press conference and apologized, while some of the victims' families went to the Rekit Benkisser headquarters in the UK to protest. But I understand that in cases like this, it is quite difficult to hold the foreign parent company responsible.
Yes, it is very difficult to investigate the CEOs of the multinational corporations based in one of the foreign countries. According to the Council of Europe's Interdiction Treaty Agreement, we have to take procedures to recall them to Korea for the investigation. But it is extremely complicated and very difficult for us, practically speaking, to have an investigation in Korea. So it will take a time. And then when we review the previous cases, when without cooperation of the involving foreign countries, I think it is, practically speaking, it is almost impossible. But anyway, the decisions or will which the prosecutor's office has about this issue. I mean, considering the very negative public opinions about this case, certainly even South Korean government and the prosecutor's office could not deal with this case quite easily. So which means that the Korean government will make every effort to give some more pressure on the British government. And British government, considering the relationship between two countries, definitely we can expect some cooperation, positive responses from the British government, which means that even though the current systems or legal procedures seems to be very, very difficult and complicated, but there are some possibilities to have the very fruitful results in these investigations, I think.
Well, it's been a long fight for the victims' families, but the government is finally moving to get some answers and prove accountability. What kind of procedural challenges lie ahead, and what will be the core issues? We talked to a couple of experts.
실제로 옥시가 판매한 그런 가습기 살균제 제품 자체가 결함이 있었는지 여부와 그리고 실제 그 제품의 결함으로 인해서 사람에 대해서 폐손상이라든지 이러한 사망의 결과에 이르게 되는 이런 부분에 대해서 이러한 것에 대한 인과관계가 있는지 여부, 이런 것이 민사소송의 가장 큰 주된 쟁점이고,
그래서 만일 유해성이 있다는 걸 알면서도 살균제를 팔았다고 한다면, 그리고 또 그 살균제가 문제가 위험성이 있다는 걸 알면서도 그 보고서를 은폐했다는 것이 밝혀진다면, 그렇다면 형법상 과실치사죄나 살인죄가 성립될 수도 있습니다. 대부분의 국가에서 가해자와 피해자 중 한 사람이라도 그 나라 국적이 있으면 그 나라 법이 적용돼요. 그래서 물론 이제 한국법이 적용되고요. 그리고 본사가 영국에 있기 때문에 영국법도 적용됩니다.
문제는 뭐냐면 과연 영국 본사 임직원들이 실제 국내에서 판매하는 가습기 살균제 제품 자체가 이게 실제로 유해한 것을 알면서도 이것을 방치하도록 허락하고 그것을 적극적으로 지시하거나 이런 것을 좀 관여한 그런 정황이 있는지 여부가 가장 중요할 것입니다.
이제 소멸시효라는 건 이제 불법행위에 대한 손해배상 청구 소송의 경우에 안 날로부터 3년, 그리고 그런 불법행위가 있은 날로부터 10년이 지날 때까지 결국 소송을 제기해야 돼요.
근데 실제 가습기 살균제라는 것이 사용했다고 해서 바로 그 폐손상이 오는 게 아닙니다. 누적이 돼가지고 그 발병이 굉장히 늦으신 분이 있거든요. 피해자분들은 자기가 폐손상이나 이런 병이 들었거나 사망했다는 사실은 알았지만 이게 실제 그 제품이 이런 가습기 살균제 제품에서 내가 이렇게 병들었구나, 이런 부분은 실제 안날에 대한 부분이 굉장히 좀 모호합니다. 가습기 살균제 제품이라서 자신이 폐손상이 있고 그것은 피해를 받았다면 지금은 소송을 빨리 제기하는 것이 가장 현명한 겁니다. 왜냐하면 일단 소멸시효 중단을 위해서도 좋고.
Now, over in the U.S., Johnson & Johnson recently lost a major lawsuit over a suggested link between its baby powder and ovarian cancer. The company was ordered to pay $55 million in damages. Now, of that amount, $50 million is in punitive damages, but this is a system that we just don't have in Korea.
No, we don't have the punitive damage. But actually, there was a trial in 2013. One congressman in Korea suggested a amendment bill. The name of the law was the Product Liability Law. This is very similar to compensation for punitive damages. Well, I think we have to think about the reasons. Those people who insist we have to adopt this law in Korea as well. There are two main reasons. They said that some business entity, when they are committing some legal the behavior, despite their business activities in illegal one, but if they make more money, I mean, there are some reasons why they continue their behavior, even though it is illegal. And the second one is that when the government cannot give some punishment for those business entity, when they did such a kind of criminal activities on purpose, I think there are some possibility they will continue those kind of behavior. And I think this is a matter of time. The current Product Liability Law amendment is in the hand of the Parliament, even though before the end of 19th Congress, there's no possibility to pass this bill. But I think this bill is planned to be resubmitted to the 20th Parliament, and then considering the social circumstances in Korea, definitely there are high possibility to adopt this law, which means that we will have the punitive law damages in Korea as well. I think it's a matter of time.
In the meantime, at the civilian level, campaigns to boycott products from Oxy, Reckitt, Benckiser have been spreading. Now, we have seen these boycott campaigns lead to positive changes in many parts of the world. In Korea, they've been largely ineffective, though. What are your thoughts on these campaigns?
The consumers' right movement or boycott movement are extremely difficult movements to sustain themselves. It is called a collective action problem in social science. It requires a very strong and sustainable leadership to maintain people's will and collective action to continuously put enough pressure on the corporations in problem who caused the problem and the government to take action. But at the same time, it is very difficult to establish the reliable causal relationship between the liability or the wrong intention of the corporation on one hand and actual damage on the consumers. But it is true that the current incident also greatly undermined the public trust in the big corporations and the government in terms of their commitment to provide the protection for the consumers and the general public.
So for now, the victims and families are getting ready to file a class action lawsuit against the government, the manufacturers, and the retailers. On the other side, there are growing calls for an introduction of consumer class action law. Do you think this will happen as well?
I think so. It's a matter of time as well, because owing to the development of telecommunications, which means that we can more get access to our informations easily than before. And then, the people's consensus has been matured very rapidly over the last several years. I think these two things can be pushing factors creating the changes in the attitude of the people toward the illegal things. When they feel they are treated unfairly, well, in the past, we can say that be patient, be patient. Patience means the number one way of the solution for the problems. But as you know very well, the situation has been changed dramatically. People just try to do something, fight against the illegal things, undesirable things. In this context, I think a class action lawsuit, a number of the class action lawsuits seems to be increased very rapidly. So I think, it's a matter of time.
But aside from the legal actions to be taking place, I think the general public should continuously support the activists to make this issue not go away too quickly. It is extremely difficult to play the role as a whistleblower because you will be the target of the criticism and pressure from the corporations in trouble. So in order to see the initial effort to improve the consumer's right into actual legal action, there should be the collective commitment in the wide range of the society to protect the people who are in the central stage of leading this collective action. There's a case of the Mr. Jeffrey Wigand, who used to work as a vice president of the research and development for the Brown and Williamson, the tobacco producing companies. And when they discovered that the company in 1996 intentionally manipulated its tobacco blend to increase the amount of nicotine to make it more addictive to the cigarette smokers, he came out and blew the whistle, but he had to go through extremely tough time to win the case against the mighty corporation he used to work. And he had support from the general public and the media by airing out his story in the CBS 60 Minutes. That was a critical turning point of this movement. So we cannot just sit quiet and wait for the good guys to win the battle, but we have to keep supporting those people who are on the front line of fighting very difficult battles for the sake of general interest for the public.
Let's move on to our final topic of the week. The government's drive for corporate restructuring is gaining greater momentum. The initial 5 sectors that were targeted are shipping, shipbuilding, steel, construction, and petrochemicals. Now there is mention of automobiles and electronics as well. But there still seems to be a lot of confusion as to how this is all going to come together. How are things progressing at the moment?
Well, certainly there must be some gap in the opinions of the Korean government and the Bank of Korea. While the Ministry of Economy and Knowledge Sharing, they emphasize that the government, Bank of Korea, should make an investment directly into Korean Development Bank, or just provide the money by purchasing the bonds issued by KDB, Korea Development Bank, or the Exim, Export-Import Banks. This is the kind of some direct investment into creditors of the 5 sectors of industries. And how about Bank of Korea? Bank of Korea, Chairman, Chancellor of the Bank of Korea certainly seems to have different opinions about this one. He says that Bank of Korea should not make investment into these sectors or provide the money directly to fix this problem. He says that we can provide loans to creditors, mainly right now Korean Development Bank and Exim Bank. By doing so, they, with the money which they got in the form of loans from the Bank of Korea, they should have to find the solution by themselves. This is the suggestion coming from the Bank of Korea. There must be big differences. But I think because of this kind of different the approaches between 2 main agencies supporting Korean economy, we have some confusion. But personally, I support for Bank of Korea's idea. In fact, the government should be very careful in making investment into the suffering industries, because that considering the total amount of money invested by the government over the last 3 years in the Park Geun-hye regime is about the roughly 45 trillion won, which is big money. But look at the market. Despite of those kind of special treatment offered by the government, market does not work properly. So I think the government should be very careful. There must be some more discussions between Bank of Korea and the government to finalize their stance.
Well, what about going to the National Assembly and add a supplementary budget?
That is another way suggested by the government. But supplementary budget is also quite burdensome on the Korean government. Why? Because that the number 1 party in the parliament is the opposition party. To get the approval from them, I think it will be extremely difficult. It will require additional the efforts and then longer time than before. To fix this problem, there must be a golden time. In terms of the time when they fix this problem, the way by using the supplementary budget can be less practical way, because as I said before, it will take a longer time.
And it will be extremely controversial.
Yes.
Well, no matter how this whole thing is financed, there is criticism that at the end of the day, it's all going to come out of taxpayers' money. What do you think?
Well, there is a growing dissatisfaction and the opposition by using taxpayers' money to bail out big corporations that had been regarded as largely ineffective and irresponsible. How many more times do we, taxpayers, need to make sacrifice to bail out these corporations? We all remember that during the Asian financial crisis in 1997 and 1998, people supported the government and big corporations by making individual sacrifices. We remember the gold collection campaign, which amounted to $3 billion US. But what happened 20 years after the financial crisis in late 1990s? We made a big deal merging big corporations using the emergency loan, $57 billion US from International Monetary Fund. But now we have the similar problem with the shipping industry and shipbuilding industry. Then who has to assume accountability? And where's the guarantee that this time the bailout and the sacrifice of the taxpayers will work? Somebody has to explain. If that formula did not really work in the past, then why it is argued that this time it might work? there is a change of the public attitude toward the government arguing for a big bailout or the big deal in favor of the government-affiliated banks or the creditors or the corporations. One good example showing the turning point of the public attitude toward this consensus between helping corporations and the protecting taxpayers' rights is when the Southgate Namdaemun was burnt down by arsonists, and when then President-elect Lee Myung-bak proposed to have public donations to rebuild the historical building, people were not enthusiastic. So they are kind of tired of making sacrifice to help the corporations. They are more interested in asking for the accountability for the corporations.
What will directly affect people's lives, though, will be the expected loss of jobs. What kind of countermeasures has the government proposed so far?
The Minister of Labor they introduced the very comprehensive measures, if I quote. At the moment, the ministry is preparing so-called job training services. At the same time, the ministry is also introduced about unemployment pay system, which means that when the people are unemployed, for a time being, the government provide the so-called the money in the name of unemployment pay. And then when the companies, particularly small and medium-sized companies, just try to maintain their, the workers, even though the orders and then operations have been shrinked, then government tried to help them for 6 months in the name of the Employment Retention Support Funds program. That means that out of total the salaries, about 60% money will be provided by the ministries, government.
Well, another concern is that these sweeping measures could weigh down the Korean economy as a whole. Do you think that will happen? What will be the ramifications?
Well, I'm afraid to make any bold prediction because either way it will not be a pretty outcome. But I would say that this might be beginning of the long cycle, the mode of economic development that we are familiar with since 1960s, dubbed as a big push capitalism. The government select a handful number of major corporations and provide the subsidies and support so that they will grow exponentially to take care of the problem with employment, full employment and the job security for citizens. The failure of these major companies in shipbuilding and shipping industries may suggest that that mode of the national economic development may be fading away as a viable or effective long-term strategy. This might be a very critical juncture for the long-term growth of national economy in Korea and the balance between corporations and employees.
Well, we have to wrap up our discussion. Your final thoughts of the week, Professor Shin.
Well, I think I'm an economist, so I hope the Korean government make a right decision to overcome the economic challenges facing us. I think I gave the same common statements before, 3 or 4 weeks ago. Definitely, there must be a golden time. I think we are getting closer to the golden time to make a final decision for the revitalization of the Korean economy. So I think we should not miss this time, this chance. So I hope the government fully consider the situation and make a right decision on time.
I'm not an economist. I'd like to make a comment on the same issue. I happen to teach a class on the Asian financial crisis, and most of my students in class were actually born at that time. So they have first-hand the memory of how difficult it was for their parents to struggle to cope with the backlash of economic crisis. And they were really scared whether current economic difficulties may portend of another economic crisis. Then their generation will be the first ever generation to be hit by 2, not just 1, but 2 major economic crises. So time is crucial for the government to take effective action.
Right.
Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Thank you.
That is all for this edition of News Inside. Thanks for watching. We'll be back with more next week.